Welcome back. You don't see too many of these, and certainly not in this condition. BMW R100 RS. It's almost box fresh. It's 30 plus years old. Honestly, it looks like it's 12 months old and hasn't seen any rain. It's really, really nice. Why is it here? It's got a problem with the charging system, apparently. Haven't verified that yet, but when you start it and run it, the charge light is on the dashboard until you give it a reasonable amount of revs. You know, it's got to do 2,000 revs before the charge light goes out. I'll show you anyway. Thought it might be an interesting one to share. They've got a slightly odd generator setup. It's got a generator on the end of the crankshaft, you know, similar to a modern bike, but it's got no permanent magnets. It's got no electromagnet with slip rings and some carbon brushes, and that's got a diode pack on the top separate to the generator, so it's sort of half alternator looking, but then the rectification is done externally with a little diode block, and then the voltage regulation is done. There's a voltage regulator underneath one of the panels, so it's a bit of an odd system. Thought it might be a nice one to share the diagnosis and the fix with you. I won't waffle too much then. To be able to get to the generator assembly, I'm pretty sure some or all of the fairings got to come out of the way. Get the tank and the side panels and the seat off just so we can get at it, and then I'll bring you back in. Right, catch you in a bit.
And then the other thing worth saying is I've spoken, I was going to say the owner, I've spoken to the dealer, because I'm doing this work for another dealer who I do bits and pieces of work for. I've spoken to him and I've misunderstood what the complaint is, and I think I might have stitched myself up slightly. You know, I always say make sure you can replicate the fault. Well, it turns out this is an intermittent problem. What to say about that? Crikey, without going on too much, the charging system on these is a little bit wonky in that it's very common when the engine is idling, ticking over, to have the charge light flicker. It's just the nature of the beast. That isn't indicative of there being an actual fault. This does seem to be, I'll perhaps show you, but the charge light doesn't go out till about 2,000 RPM, and it intermittently seems to be on permanently when it's idling, and then it'll go off. So there's something wonky going on with it. But the actual complaint from the owner is that when he's riding along and he's, you know, 3, 4, 5,000 revs and he's riding properly, the charge light will just come on bright, and he'll get to his destination, he'll try and restart, and the battery's not got enough juice in it, so it's dying intermittently. I suspect I know the problem, and we'll get to that because it's a common point of failure. I'll get to that in a minute. So yeah, so there's more to this than I initially thought. It's an intermittent fault. Right, in terms of, let's talk about getting it apart first. Okay, it's the next day. I didn't get a chance to do much more to this. If I sound like my voice is different, it's because it is. I've woken up with a man plague. So excuse the croaky voice. I misspoke. It's not the first time. I don't know what I was thinking. The voltage regulator on these is not under the side panels, it's under the tank here. I don't really know what I was thinking. Anyway, I've got the front bit of the fairing off, I got the tank and the side panels off. Let's just talk about the anatomy of this charging system, if you like, all the components involved. I think this video really, rather than going down a massive waffle hole about all the intricacies and all the testing, I think this video is probably for somebody that's already got a little bit of background knowledge, you know, a motorbike mechanic that's got a charging system fault with one of these that isn't familiar with a charging system. This will just be a bit of an overview. I'll show you some of the tests I do, one of which is sort of maybe not conventional in terms of testing the stator under load. Yeah, let's do that. Right, first top tip of the day. This front cover goes on the front of the engine here that covers all the gubbins. You must disconnect the battery before you try and remove this, because I'll show you in a second, but the outer casing of the rectifier is live all the time, and the cover's quite close to it, so when you pull the cover off you can short the battery out. It's live without the ignition on, so there's potential for some bad stuff. You don't want to let the magic smoke out of the rectifier if you can avoid it. So yeah, just disconnect the ground cable before you take this cover off, and then you can reconnect it back up. That's the first top tip. Right, let's talk about I don't want to make this a big long video. Let's talk about the components of this charging system, because it's a little bit unconventional if you're used to working on, you know, normal modern-ish Japanese bikes. Right, I'm going to try really hard to not send you all to sleep. So if you're used to a modern Japanese, or you know, another motorbike with a normal, in inverted commas, charging system, this might appear a little bit alien. The principles are all exactly the same. Let's talk about a standard bike. What you would have with a standard bike is you would have the generator, a 3-phase generator on the end of the crankshaft. And by the way, I'll link in the description or in the top corner here, wherever that is on this video, a video that I made. I think it's called The Anatomy of a Motorcycle Charging System. If you can bear to listen to me waffle for an hour, you'll hopefully, by the end of watching that video, you'll have a good understanding of a conventional motorcycle charging system, which is what I'm relating to now when I'm talking. A conventional motorcycle charging system has got a generator on the end of the crankshaft, a 3-phase generator. It's what's called a permanent magnet system. So there are magnets in the flywheel which is rotating around the stator, and that, without getting into it here, that basically generates 3-phase electricity. 3-phase, yeah, and that 3-phase is sent to a thing called a regulator rectifier. That's one unit which regulates and rectifies the AC voltage from the generator. Now then, so you've got sort of two main components on a bike. You've got the generator assembly on the crankshaft, and you've got the regulator rectifier, and it's usually up on the subframe or somewhere. You'll recognise it, and I know a lot of you guys know this already, but you know, it's got heat sink on it, so it'll have fins to keep itself cool. A bit different with this setup. So you have, essentially you have a stator, which is this outer piece here, and then you have a rotor inside. Now the big difference is, with this setup, the rotor is not a permanent magnet, it's an electromagnet, which means, well, oh fucking hell, really? Are we going to do this, are we, Jim? No, fuck it, I'm carrying on. The rotor is an electromagnet, which means that it needs current flow. Shit. Okay, remember in school, right? Basic physics. To create current flow or voltage, you have a length of copper wire, and you get a permanent magnet, and you pass the permanent magnet over the wire, and you induce current flow in the wire. The electrons move along the wire. Well, technically that's not happening anyway. What you've got here is you've got, let's just take the rotor. In fact, let me get a rotor and I'll explain about rotors first. Right, this is a rotor. It rotates, hence the name, and this is on the end of the crankshaft, right? And on this end here, these are called slip rings. So what's happening here? This is basically a length of copper wire. One end is joined to this slip ring. This, in fact, you can see the solder point there, look. One end of the wire is joined to this one, the other end of the wire is joined to this one, and it's just wrapped around this core in a special way, but it's essentially a length of copper wire, one end to here, one end to there. Now then, remember in school, if you have got a piece of wire on something, this socket is a magnet, right? You pass, if it'll fucking focus, you pass, sorry, I know this is old news to most of you, but it just, having this background, if you're learning about this subject, is kind of useful. Otherwise I'm talking and you've got no idea what the fuck I'm going on about. So imagine this straw is a piece of wire and this is a magnet. If you pass this magnet, past this piece of wire, if I had a voltmeter or an oscilloscope connected, you'd see voltage in this wire. The reverse of that, because physics being physics, is if you pass current through this wire, the wire becomes magnetic. The wire turns into a magnet. So that's exactly what's happening here. There are two little brushes which are like this, little carbon brushes, and they run on these two slip rings. The slip rings being these copper pads here. Voltage is, there's a ground on one side, there's positive on the other. Current flows through this coil of wire inside, which you can see, and this becomes an electromagnet. Right, what else to say about this? The current that flows through this rotor is controlled by the voltage regulator. Okay, so on this bike, normally on a conventional bike, you'd have a regulator rectifier, and that's one unit that's doing the, go watch the other video, but it's converting the three-phase AC into DC, and then it's also regulating the voltage going to the battery, or it's regulating the voltage in the charging system. So with this bike, I'll show you in a second on the engine, but there is a separate rectifier. So the three-phase coming out of the generator, which we'll also have a look at in a second, the three phases coming out of that generator, they're rectified into DC, but that DC voltage isn't controlled. It's just whatever comes out of it. But it is controlled because there's another component on the bike. This is a new one. This is the voltage regulator. And what the job of this is, it basically, I don't know in layman's terms, it looks at the voltage of the battery, and when the voltage of the battery drops too low, it applies current to this, which increases the magnetic field, which increases the charge rate. If the voltage of the battery gets too high, it reduces the current flow through this electromagnet, so the generator doesn't produce as much current flow. You understand? So the charge control on one of these BMWs is done by varying the voltage and current flow through this rotor. So this is one of the main components. This is one of the other main components. This is the voltage regulator. And then you've got the stator, picture on the screen now. So you've got the stator, and that is effectively exactly the same as the three-phase generator, the stator on a more modern bike. It's wound, I'm pretty sure, in a star configuration, not delta. We won't get into that, but that is again essentially 3 lengths of copper wire. This is then the magnet. You're passing magnetic flux past those wires on the stator, and that's generating three-phase AC. I don't want to go into it any more than that. Well, I'm going to go into it more than that, but I've done that to death, I think. So this is the rotor. You've got the stator on the bike, and you've got the voltage regulator on the bike. There's also a charge light. Excuse me. There's a charge light, which is quite important. Let me just talk about that here while I've got a socket and a straw to use. So imagine this is the bulb on the dashboard, right? That when you turn the ignition on, it lights up. What's happening with this bulb, a normal bulb, it needs a ground and a positive supply. So if you connect a bulb to a battery, it lights up, right? This charge light bulb, let's not try and murder this subject. It has a live to one side of it, okay, and it's getting its ground. The wire from the other side of the bulb goes all the way down. It actually goes to one of the terminals on this voltage regulator, and then it branches off and it goes to one of these slip rings, and then it goes all the way through the wire, and then the other slip ring is ground. So this bulb, when the engine isn't running, it's got a live to one side, and it's getting its ground. The path to ground is through one slip ring, through the winding, back out the other slip ring to ground. So when this isn't energized, this bulb is on because it's got a path to ground. As soon as the voltage regulator starts to apply power, voltage to the slip ring, this bulb goes out, because this bulb then ends up with a positive connection on one side and a positive connection on the other side. So the bulb goes out. Fucking hell, did I murder that? I think probably I did, but you might have gleaned a bit of information. let's go back to the bike and let's talk a little bit about testing the different components. While I'm here also, having a waffle, there's a book and I've got a copy of it, and can I bloody find it? I've had it for years. It's a great book on these charging systems. I'll find a picture on the internet and I'll flash it on the screen now, but it's Classic Boxer Charging, maybe it's called, something like that. It's a brilliant book, not expensive, go buy a copy. I bought a copy years ago, and when I was sort of learning this subject, it was really, really useful. Right, to the bike. Right, initially, let me just show you the fault. So this is the charge light, okay? So as I increase the revs, so generally speaking, the sort of benchmark everybody uses is anything over 1500 RPM, the light should be out. So we get into, where are we getting to? Sort of over 2000 before it goes out. Let me turn that off. Usually, not always, that is a sign that there's something wrong with the voltage regulator, which is this thing here. And you saw the new black one on the bench. Anyway, that's the fault. And then after speaking to the guy that brought this to me, not the owner, but the dealer that sold it to the owner, it also would intermittently have a charge light come on when you were riding at higher RPM. Right, now I've said that, let me just talk you through some of the basic testing, because I think once I've done that, that's probably the end of this video. I'm very conscious that this isn't a subject for everybody. The kind of people that are going to watch this video are likely trying to fix one of these. So let me get to the crux of the video, which is the testing of the individual components. Okay, let's get on with the testing, because that's why you're all here, I'm sure. Quick and dirty test for the voltage regulator. This is the plug. I've just unplugged it from underneath. It just pulls out. There's no tab or anything. Easy peasy. I've got a split pin in here, jumping the blue and the black wires together. Effectively what that is doing is that's applying full battery voltage to the rotor through those slip rings, so it's got maximum amount of magnetic field. So it's taking the voltage regulator out of the equation. Let's run it now. If the charge light goes out immediately and, you know, isn't on at 1500 RPM, this is the culprit. Let's give that a try. Editing Jim here. Oh my god, I'm having a nightmare with this edit. I've managed to lose some footage, and also some of the audio is wonky. Let me just talk you through what's going on here. So I've misspoken as well in that last bit of, well, I didn't misspeak, I just didn't do a very good job of explaining. What's happening is that, you know, I said I've got 12 volt battery voltage to the coil. Technically that's not true, because the charge light on the dashboard is in series. So I haven't got 12 volt. I've connected up the 12 volt supply, if you like, from the charge light on the dashboard, but there's a voltage drop across that bulb. Let me just put a diagram on the screen for you. Okay guys, a little diagram for you. So this here, so we've got a 12 volt supply, which is representing the battery. I know the battery's not necessarily 12 volts, but you get the meaning. This 25 ohm resistor here represents the bulb in the dashboard, the charge light, and then this 6 ohm resistor down here represents the winding in the rotor. If you look here, just because there's two resistances in series, there's a 9 volt drop across the bulb in the dashboard. And then I think I'm making sense. I misspoke when I said I'm putting 12 volt to the, basically what I should have said was I was taking the voltage regulator out of the equation. Anyway, I did that test. I've lost the blooming footage and there's no audio for it. So the light basically was still on the dashboard in the same way, even with the power supply connected directly to the rotor. Anyway, on with the show. Before I take you to the bench and talk rotors, I just wanted to show you something. So these are these two connections I've made with my meter. If I get my hand out of there so it focuses, they're the field winding connections that go through those carbon brushes onto the slip ring of the rotor. So I'm just measuring technically you would measure the resistance through the rotor just by touching your probes on the slip ring and just measuring the current through there. At the moment, I'm also measuring any resistance in this brush holder or through the carbon brushes with a contact onto the slip ring. Does that make sense? So at the moment, I've got, what's that, 6.1 ohms, which is, I'm just trying to remember. I need to find that blooming Boxer book, which is Boxer Charging Systems book, which is really good because it's got all the values in. The earlier ones, don't quote me, were like 7.5 ohms, like the early airheads. And then they changed and they dropped the resistance of that rotor down to, I don't know, 2.5, 3 ohms, something like that. Hang on, I'm about to be interrupted. You're right, I'm filming. Gone away again. Well-trained wife, well done. Where was I? Yeah, there's from memory, there's 3 different rotor resistances depending on the model year. The later ones, 1990 on, I think it was, were a low resistance, so they were they 2.5 ohms? So the lower, I cannot speak today. The lower the resistance, the more current flow, Ohm's law being what it is, the more current flow through the rotor, so stronger magnetic field. Anyway, I digress.
Another editing Jim intervention, just quickly. What I also tested, and I've lost the footage, is as I was doing the resistance through the brush holder and the brushes into the winding of the rotor, I also then, from the input wire into the rotor, I also went to ground, and there's a leak to ground through the winding of the rotor. So with that in mind, the rest might make a little bit more sense.
I'll do it here rather than on the bench. Ground, not that makes any difference with resistance. So this is the new rotor. Now I've bought this rotor because this is a newer rotor with the lowest resistance. So one of the mods you would do to these airheads back in the day, because a long time since I worked on one of these, you use the more modern rotor. Even on the older stuff, you'd use this rotor because there's more current flow through this, you get a stronger magnetic field. And you would do that in conjunction with this voltage regulator, which they call the police spec one, and it just basically it starts charging at lower RPM. God, that's annoying. Either put another glove on or take the other glove off. Yeah, so the mod is this voltage regulator and this rotor to beef up the charging system a little bit, and you can also get much better quality. We need to investigate, we need to look at the I'm having trouble, I think maybe I've got COVID, I'm having trouble with the whole voltage regulator rectifier thing. I keep getting rectifier and regulator mixed up. We need to look at the rectifier bit of it too, because they have their issues, let's put it that way, and there are much better modern aftermarket voltage regulators, Jesus Jim, rectifiers available. Right, anyway, I was going to test the resistance on this, wasn't I? I was just going to show you. So this one, look, is, make a fool out of me now, what is it? Whoa, that's lower than I thought it was going to be. Okay, so lots of current flow through there. Yeah, 1.6. I thought they were supposed to be 2 point something. Correct me in the comments. Anyway, definitely got a rotor problem. Let me get the stator off. I've got no reason to assume, God, you're going to waffle. I've got no reason to assume there's anything wrong with the stator with the 3-phase. They generally don't go wrong because they're stationary, because they're a stator. No moving parts. They're generally quite reliable. I was going to show you testing the output of the generator. You know, on a bridge of those 2 wires on the voltage regulator, I was going to take you to the 3 phases on the generator and show you the AC output. And then what you can do is you can load the AC output with a bulb. I'm going to have to hang fire on that. I need to get this fitted and the new brushes, and we'll replace the voltage regulator because I've got the better one, this one. Let's do that. I'll bring you back in and then I'll show you some of the other testing you can do to confirm whether you've got a problem with the generator, the three-phase coming out of the generator, or whether you've got a problem with the rectifier. Right, let's do that. Okay, these three-phase wires, so I'm taking this generator assembly off. This has got to come off before I can get the rotor off the end of the crank. These three-phase wires, doesn't matter which way around those go. And I don't really want to get into it, but this other wire here, this other terminal, which way round was it? It was like this, wasn't it? This other connection, for those of you that are interested, this generator is wired in star configuration, and this would be the center point of those three windings. Probably talking Chinese for some of you, but if you're wondering, that's what that is. Right. In case you're wondering how I was holding that, I've got it in gear and I've got the back brake on. Now then, there is a puller for this. It's not a very technical puller, and I thought I had a puller for one of these. Well, I definitely had a puller for one of these at some point. Can I find the fucking thing? So I've had to order another one, which has just arrived. I think I must have loaned it to somebody. I never lose my tools. I'm absolutely OCD about putting stuff away. Let's grab the puller. That's the puller. It's like a bolt with a long shank on the end of it. Basically screws in. There's a threaded section in the front of this rotor here. It screws in and then pushes on the end of the crankshaft. What is that? 13mm probably. I was going to say out loud, they're not normally that difficult to pull off, but I bet this one is. Now I've said that. Look at that. Marvellous. Right, let's take that to the bench and have another testy. Right, I just want to give you a... If I stop knocking my camera, I just wanted to give you a comparison of these two. So this one, I just measured it already. Again. That's more like it. Why on earth was it measuring low before? I did just calibrate my meter. That's a bit weird. Anyway, that's what I expected to see the first time. 2.5 ohms. Now if I have it on one of those two, so that's 2.5 ohms, and then when I go to ground, make sure I get a really good connection. Infinite resistance. Okay, so there's no leak to ground. So with this one, the old one, I'm getting 3.5, which I think is probably about right, because of this. Anyway, I've talked about that. But then if I go to one of the windings and then to ground, you can see that there's a leak in that winding. So what's happened is, you can see the state of this. The winding, as the insulation's broken down on the winding inside, and it's shorting to ground. That is 100% the issue, which is normally the case. Okay, I'm going to put this back together with a new rotor. I'm going to give this, it looks like it's been in stock for donkey's years. I get some Brasso on here, give this slip ring a nice polish. Otherwise it will wear the brushes out quicker. That needs to be nice and smooth and shiny. Let's refit that. Let's put the Jenny back on. Let's have a look at the rectifier, and then we can do some testing. Once it's all back together and wired up, we can do some testing
of the stator, and maybe talk a little bit about the rectifier as well. Okay, it's also probably worth testing this on the bench, just it's easier to show you this way. So, wow, I don't want to go in this rabbit hole. Go and watch, I'll put the link up here, go and watch the anatomy of a motorcycle charging system, because I talk about three-phase generators and star and delta configuration and the way they're wired. So this is a star configuration. I can't go into it here, but here's the test. Okay, so we've just got the meter on horseshoe mode. Okay, so we're measuring resistance in ohms. We've got one of the connectors to this probe, which is the center of the star configuration, if that makes any sense to you, and I'm going to touch on here. Okay, we got continuity all the way through there. Next one, continuity all the way through there. Next one, continuity all the way through there. Now then, you need to test the ground this way. So this is on ground, this is still in the center of the star, center of the windings. Nothing, open circuit, okay, which is perfect. And then you can go, if you really want to, you can go between phases like this. Now you'll get a bit of resistance this way because you're actually measuring, you're doubling up on the windings. I'm not going to try and explain why here. What you're looking for is almost complete continuity, okay, and you're looking for them to all be the same. So that's a pair, that's a pair, and that's a pair, and they're all identical. There's fuck all wrong with this. I'm going to put the new brushes in it and the new springs, polish that slip ring on the new rotor, get it all bolted together, and let's talk about the rectifier. Okay, and to do it up, I'm just using a pin spanner to hold this rotor, and click. It's got a new wavy washer underneath the bolt, like 20 pence. Didn't use a torque wrench, sorry. And then the other thing I noticed, haha, this was a thing that I'd completely forgotten about. These rectifiers are rubber mounted, and the top two rubber mounts have broken. That's the problem, because this cover is really close, and this, if this vibrates around on its shitty rubber mountings and earths out on this case, it'll fry itself. I don't think it's been doing that, but the top mounts are definitely broken. And they used to struggle with, there's an earth strap, you probably can't see it with my crappy camera angle, but there's an earth strap from this case to the back of here. These earths were always a bit of a problem. One of the mods, I'll have a look, you must still be able to get them. People used to bin off the rubber mountings and mount them solidly, which meant it was a better heat sink, and it was a proper earth, and you didn't have to worry about the shitty earth wire. Let me get this off, which is a bit of a mission because I've got to take the top cover off to get to the, yeah, let's get this off next.
What a gigantic pain in the arse that is. So those are the earth straps, one each side, and these are the broken rubber mountings from that. It's a right pain because you've got to get this top cover off, which means air filter, and anyway, to get to the nuts on the back, and the nuts are an absolute pig to get at. So that's that. That's the regulator. I keep calling it a bloody regulator rectifier. Let's call it a diode board, which is technically the right terminology for one of these. The rectifier. I've got the rectifier off / diode board. It's on the bench. Let's go and do a little bit of testing of that. Okay, the diode board. Super easy to test. There are 6 diodes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these are the main diodes that rectify the 3-phase AC that comes out of the stator, and then there are 3 other smaller diodes internally, which, remember we talked about the charge light, and when you turn the ignition on, one side of the charge light bulb gets a positive supply, and then it gets a ground through the winding of the rotor, so the light is on. These, how to explain, on this pin here, on this other, so this is the 3-phase output in the center, or rather the input in the center, so 3 phases in and the main DC output after it's been rectified. One of these two, in fact these 2 terminals are the same terminal. That is an output wire to the voltage regulator, and it also connects into that wire that's the ground for the bulb. So this outputs, as soon as this diode board starts to make charge, this terminal also becomes a positive, and then the bulb, the charge light on the dashboard, doesn't have a ground, so the light goes out. Did I just murder that? I think maybe I did. Right, diode testing. I'm going to blast through this as quick as I can, because you probably already know how to do it, and if you don't, I'm not sure I'm the man to teach you. Right, something to say here. A lot of workshop manuals will tell you to use horseshoe mode, ohms, for your... Oh my god, it's my phone. Let me silence that, sorry guys. It's my sister ringing me, I'll ring her back in a minute. So, a lot of workshop manuals will tell you to use ohms, horseshoe mode, to do your diode testing. If your meter has it, not all meters do, but a lot of meters have a diode continuity testing mode. So let's select that. I'm going to get interrupted. My wife has just driven in the driveway. So let's calibrate this. Ready to go. Right, stand by, I'll be back in a second. Well, that was worth a video pause. They brought me a Subway. Awesome. Right, back in the room. Diode testing. Did I just... Oh my god, I can't remember where I was up to. I'm going to repeat myself probably. There's 2 volts on the end of these probes. Did I say that? See how it says 2 volts there? In diode testing, continuity mode, the meter is, if you connected another multimeter up to here, you'd measure 2 volts DC. Did I already say that? Anyway, so diode mode is better for testing diodes. Funny that, isn't it? Rather than horseshoe mode. What this is going to do is it's going to apply 2 volts through these diodes, and it's going to measure the voltage drop. And diodes like this, generally speaking, somewhere between 5 and 600 millivolts. So let's go and have a test. So 537, 532. What's happening? Have I got a bad connection? Yeah. 538. Oh, what's going on there? Oh, it's just my meter. 537. 532. Now then, and that one's fine. So what we then do is we reverse the polarity. So we swap the wires over, the leads from the meter. Okay. And we should have 0 voltage drop. We should just have, let's just test, see if that's working, which is, let's test it on there as well. Yeah, okay, right. Shall we get a good connection? I confess, I've already been round here with this. I'm showing you again for the second time. These are all absolutely fine. You get the idea. This has got like a weird sort of shellac type stuff on it, so you have to really spike the meter in. Anyway, so those 6 diodes, there's a forward voltage drop, forward bias of 600 millivolts, and then it's just open circuit, no current will flow the other way. So those 6 diodes test good. And then on the other side, the 3 little diodes that provide that DC power to the charge light, we connect that up to there like that. What we should have on here, I haven't tested these yet, so we've got nothing that way round. Let's swap this meter round. I think the voltage drop is different with these diodes. I can't remember now. I wish I could find my book. Yeah. Okay, so 478, 473, 469, and you saw that. Let me just show you again. I'll swap the leads back around. You understand, right? So that test's okay. I think we're done, aren't we? Do you really want to see it back together and working correctly? Probably not. The point of this video was, if you've come across one of these and you've never worked on one and it's got a charging problem, hopefully watching me go through this a little bit, you're not completely flying blind, are you? You've got some idea of where to go and what to look for, and the sort of anatomy of it. Let's call time on this. It's not one of those clickbaity videos with a fancy thumbnail and title. Probably won't get a lot of views. This will just live on the internet. Hopefully people will come across this video when they've got a charging problem with one of these, and it will be of some use. If you found it interesting, give it a like. If you want to subscribe, if you haven't already, that'd be amazing. And then I always say at the end of my videos now, we have a motorcycle repair chat group on a Discord server. There's a link in the description. You become a patron. It's $1 or £1 a month, and then you get access to the Discord, which has just grown and grown. It's an absolutely mega place. There's loads of people that are doing this for a living there. If you're into fixing bikes, I think it is the place to hang out, because people sharing. Oh, there's also I should also say, crikey, waffleage. There's also a service database with hundreds and hundreds of workshop manuals and all this service information. I think there might even be a PDF copy of that book I was talking about called Classic Boxer Charging, whatever it was. I'll flash a picture of that on the screen right now. The cover, I'll grab it off the internet and show you if you want to know more about these, that's a great book, and there's wiring diagrams and all sorts of stuff in it. Anyway, I'm waffling. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate you all. I'm going to go and eat my Subway. Take it easy.